Okay. There we go. Now we're, it didn't announce it. Apparently they changed it so it doesn't announce anymore, but this webinar is being recorded so that I can upload it later on onto our YouTube channel if folks want to go back. And if there's people that are interested in this topic and they can't make it for this webinar, but they want to see the part 2, it'd probably be helpful to go back and review this one first before they do part 2. So it will be there as soon as I can get it uploaded, as soon as I get a chance, which should be tomorrow, as a matter of fact. Okay, a couple more people popping in, but I'm going to go ahead and start. Motivational interviewing is certainly not new, and it is something that I think has a lot of useful potential for advocacy work, and I would guess that some of you already may have training in motivational interviewing and use it all the time. Other folks, there may be parts of this that you use, so it will seem really familiar. You just didn't necessarily know, oh, there's a name for that thing that I do with clients, or that intention that I have, because it works. And when we find something that works, we tend to go back and keep doing it. So this thing called motivational interviewing was originally developed in '83, and it came out of the substance abuse field. And I am going to refer quite a bit to that, but I really want to tie it into ways that I see it being useful in advocacy. And the idea is essentially that you can tell somebody that they need to change something about their life, something that they're doing, as many times as you want. But until it's important to them, until they are motivated by themselves, there's not going to be successful change. It's one of those, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You might be able to force it to drink, but the change is not going to be in any way long term. So this was a way of trying to get a hold of those internal processes that lead people to want to change, and to increase that motivation and to decrease the reasons why they wouldn't want to change. And it's very person-centered. You really have to meet the person where they're at, what's important to them, what their belief systems are, where they want to be next year, in 10 years, you name it. And as I said, because it came out of the substance abuse field, it's been used and tested a lot in that setting. And so it's evidence-based work as being a successful tool, an evidence-based model in substance abuse in particular. But there's been other mental health settings where it's been found to be extremely useful in moving people along in their change process. And since, again, with advocacy, we are absolutely working with people that are at some of the biggest change points in their life, some of their huge turning points. And so I think it can be useful. So it's really a way of coming alongside somebody rather than acting as an instructor or acting as an expert. You come alongside them, as I said, where they're at, and have a conversation with them. It's a bit more like coaching. It's a bit more like helping somebody facilitate that person thinking about what's important to them, what their values, what they want out of life. So you point out, you help them identify those things, and you point out what's different between what's going on now and where it is they want to be, or what's different between going on now and what they say they value or they believe. And by kind of expanding and bringing to light that disparity, they're a bit more motivated to take those positive steps towards who and what they want to do. So philosophically, it is very collaborative. And let me just back up a second and say that really in this webinar, I'm just going to kind of lay foundation. I'm going to talk about philosophy. I'm going to talk about the different, I'm going to talk about stages of change. I'm going to talk about what are the things that move people towards change, but I'm not really going to get much into specific skills or even phrases or what I call stems. You know, this is how you say this to get this to happen. I'm really not going to get much there. I'm going to save that for the next time. So this is based in a collaborative approach as opposed to a confrontation approach. And so, as I said, substance abuse in batterer intervention treatment programs, this approach is very much becoming recommended practice, because you can shake your finger in somebody's face as much as you want and tell them that they've been naughty, but that doesn't really make them care to listen to you again, to think that anything that you have to say is important, and it really just builds up defensiveness, and rather than creating that space where people are open to hear a different message. So collaboration is one part of the basic philosophy. Another is that motivation and commitment to change is most powerful and it's most durable when it comes from that client as opposed to from external forces. So even though, again, with batterer intervention, even though we have court-ordered people to treatment, or there might be somebody court-ordered to substance abuse treatment, it's really not going to be successful unless they themselves want to change. And so sometimes it is that aha moment that you have with your clients where they go, wait a minute, and something just clicks into place, and it's sudden. And sometimes instead of being this big aha moment, it is just a smaller thing where suddenly they'll look back and they'll say, wow, you know, a month ago I wasn't thinking in this way at all. A month ago I felt entirely different about this. A month ago there was no way I could have had this amount of confidence. There was no way I would have been thinking about trying that. And so they may not be able to point to that specific aha moment, but it has kind of happened under the surface. And then another important piece of the philosophy is autonomy as opposed to authority. In other words, you person that I'm working with, you are the one that has the true power. It's not me as an advocate that's going to create change for you. It's you. You are enough. You have what it takes. You're responsible for your life. There's no single right way. You are powerful, and you can do this. So making sure that both the work and the responsibility and the celebrating is internal to them. It's about them. What I want to be really clear about, particularly in this field, is what motivational interviewing is not for advocates. And one thing that we have to be really clear on is that it's not a way to convince or coerce survivors into leaving perpetrators. In other words, that would be your goal for change. That is not necessarily their goal for change. And just as caring human beings that want everybody we come in contact with to be happy and healthy and safe, we always have this natural urge to push towards leaving, even when we are 100% convinced and can lecture for hours on the fact that leaving is not the same thing as safety. So this isn't a way to try and get people to think about leaving. It's a way to get people to think about whatever is the change goal for them. The other piece of that is that it's not, there's something that will often irritate me. Every time it happens, it irritates me. Fortunately, I don't hear it too often anymore. When people will say, well, so-and-so would leave their batterer, but they're just not there yet. They're not ready for that. And while there's a piece of that that's true, that there is an emotional point that any of us get to in a relationship where we decide, you know what, I'm done. That's so much just one little part of what's going on for our clients, that when people kind of put the burden of, well, that person's being battered because they're just not ready to leave because they're not motivated, it's really not about their motivation. That might be one little piece, is the emotional attachment there, but there's so much else going on that stages of change is simply not, which I'm going to go into soon here, is simply not an adequate model to describe what's going on for survivors of domestic abuse. There's tons and tons and tons of barriers that you all know that are standing in the way, no matter how motivated they may be internally, that stand in the way of them being able to actually accomplish the change that they want. So let's talk about those stages of change. And so stages of change goes hand in hand with motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing is the tool or the car, if you will, that helps you to assist people on this journey through each of these little landmarks, right? And I'm gonna go through them. Pre-contemplation is when the person isn't ready for change. They really don't intend to take any action in the foreseeable future, which is usually considered to be like next 6 months. They either don't know about or are underinformed about the consequences of a particular choice or behavior. And it may be that they did try change in the past and it didn't work and they're demoralized and they just think, well, that's not ever going to change. They'll often avoid talking about whatever issue. If you're thinking of the substance abuse model, you can think about, well, I don't have a drinking problem. I don't know what you're talking about, and I'm going to avoid conversations around that. Or maybe I tried cutting down and it didn't work, but you know what? I can still maintain a job. So, and I only fight with my partner once a week. That's not so bad. So it's not a big problem. In the therapy world or in the social services world, sometimes those folks are called resistant or unmotivated, or they're unready for help. And within this model, it's nope, they're in pre-contemplation. That's the stage that they're in. That's followed by contemplation. In other words, you're starting to think about it, starting to get ready. Definitely more aware of the pros and cons of whatever choice or change. But at this point, it's pretty equally weighted. When you think about what would be the benefits and what would be the consequences of me doing this, there's a lot of ambivalence at this stage. This is where you, I think that'd be a good idea, but you just chronically procrastinate. I can kind of think of this as the yes but stage. So if you have a client that says yes but, yes but, yes but, there's a real good chance that they're in the contemplation stage about whatever it is that they're thinking about changing in their life. Preparation, pretty easy to figure out. That's when you're getting ready. They are going to take action in the immediate future and typically have taken some significant action recently. They're developing a plan. They are getting together their resources. They are beginning to learn more about X, Y, or Z. Action, that's the specific, overt, I'm actually doing something. And because other people can see it, when we think of people going through change in their life or making changes in their behaviors, we always focus on the action piece because that's what we can see. And so we don't see these other stages. We just see that one. So that's often been the focus of intervention, is only the action stage. But if you only focus there and you haven't gone through the previous ones, chances are you're not going to get very far. Maintenance is where the person has made overt changes. They might be working to prevent relapse. And when you think about maintenance, think about like car maintenance. You actually do have to actively keep doing it. So it isn't necessarily something that is automatic, habitual, and instinctive yet. You may not have to do whatever pro-con analysis or whatever change process or hip hooray that you're using to get you through to the action stage to maintenance, but you still have to keep going. But you get less tempted to go back to that old behavior, go back to that previous thing, and the confidence that you'll be able to maintain grows. Now, what I don't have on this chart in front of you is what you might want to think of as extra stages or little arrows that I could have added, one of which is relapse. And what we know now is change is often accompanied by a stumble or two or three or four, and that people may be forever in that maintenance stage where they have to constantly, thoughtfully work at maintaining that behavior. Another stage that isn't on there is termination, and that is where, I'm not tempted to do that old thing anymore. I'm 100% effective. It is a way of life now. It's an automatic habit. I have a new way of coping, and you can kind of think of that as leaving this process altogether. Now, what I will say is some of the research on getting to that termination, if you look at, again, substances, which is what most of the research is based on, less than 20% of people with substance issues actually get to that termination. And so maybe what we really need to focus on is maintenance as lifetime goals for many changes. So let me take this out of the substance abuse realm and put it into an example that might be more like what you might encounter with a client. So when you sit down with somebody and they're thinking about their goals and what's important to them, often the focus now is on economic issues. And so you might suggest, are you thinking about changing jobs or moving or whatever? So here's the pushback. Yeah, me, go to school. Yeah, right. I'm too stupid. I didn't do well in school before. That's not an option. So that door is just closed. So even though you might have raised it, even though you might have handed over a brochure about some grants for some program, whatever. That's just not where they want to go right now. It's an option. It doesn't seem like it's even worthwhile for them to think about it. Contemplation then would be that next stage where the person is saying, well, what's the cons of that? Well, my partner might be very upset if I was went to school because I'd be around other people and they sometimes don't like that, or I would be busier and not be able to spend so much time focused on them. And it would cost money to go back to school, and I don't know where I would get that. And after all, I'm too stupid. Oh, no one would ever hire me. It would be a waste of time, and replace some of those batterer tapes. And then on the pro side, you know what? I once did this internship, a long time ago before we got together, and I really liked that. And think about the example that I'd be setting for my kids. And eventually, even though it might cost a little up front, eventually I would have a lot more economic capacity, and that would be better for my family, and I would feel like I had more freedom if I wasn't constantly struggling. And so they're kind of on this tightrope going back and forth. What if I fail? What if I succeed? Then preparation might look like, well, how would this affect my relationship? What do I do if my partner were to blow up? Who am I really? And sometimes I think this is where we will encounter folks where they're thinking, they've heard the tapes from their batterer, well, you're too stupid, you're whatever, and they're pushing back against that, and they're beginning to have this vision and this realization of themselves and the possibilities as something more, and that's where they're taking the steps to reach out for help with that something more, and trying to figure that out. So they might be looking at course catalogs. They might be looking at courses they can take online that would be maybe cheaper or less intrusive in their life than having to travel the next county over to go to a college. And how could I pay for that? How would it be possible that it wouldn't harm my finances? And can I see myself in this other way where I actually have these abilities, I have this skill, and there is this future for me that's different? The action phase would be starting nursing school and actually challenging self and feeling like, hey, maybe I can really do this. I guess if you wanted to think about relapse, it might be something like dropping out of classes. And that would be different than I'm leaving classes because it's no longer safe because my perpetrator has escalated so much. It would be leaving because I just don't feel up to it. My sense of self doesn't think that I can do this. I'm scared. I have anxiety when dealing with the tests. I have so one of the things to look at there is that about structural barriers? Is there safety barriers? Is it about self? What are the things that that person has to deal with when they're trying to walk through this action stage? And there's parts there that we can certainly help with. Maintenance may be, hey, I did that, and now I've got a job. My partner doesn't have as much control over me because I make some more money now. So I feel more confident. I feel like I can do things that I couldn't do before. I feel better about myself. I feel better about myself as a parent. And then using that to counteract some of those other feelings of, gosh, this is tiring, or sometimes I feel like, yeah, my perpetrator doesn't control all my time anymore, but now my job controls my time more than I would like. And so maintenance would be talking yourself through that and say, no, this really has been worthwhile, and I like this change. I like my life now, and I'm going to continue it. So I tried to come up with an example that was as far from therapy and substance abuse as possible to try and make it relevant and see how, even though that's not about is she ready to leave her perp or not, it's so relevant to our work, the stages of change people go through. I'd like to talk a little bit about the change process for people and the things that help them to change, and I think that you'll see a lot of familiar stuff here. And one of the first ones is what's called decisional balance, which we all do all the time. Is this action, is this choice, is this behavior, is this something that is going to be in my best interest, or do the cons outweigh the pros? And so when somebody is in the pre-contemplation, the pros of the old thing are outweighed by the relative cons. In other words, change is not on the map because the cons seem better. In contemplation, pros and cons, they're about equal, and so they're doing that balance. I don't know, should I, shouldn't I? And so if we can help to tip the scale towards the pros, towards change, it is in my best interest to change, then that's what moves people to the preparation or the action stage. And then hopefully in maintenance, the pros continue to outweigh the cons to keep that change in place. If any of you are using Seeking Safety as a curriculum, I think you'll find a lot of this very, very familiar, because what Seeking Safety is a curriculum for trauma recovery, particularly for folks with co-occurrent substance abuse, and it tries to leverage a lot of these different change processes for folks in that group. So one of the first things, and we do this all the time in our work, is consciousness raising, giving people information, stats. Well, here's the symptoms of trauma. You don't have bad kids. What you have are kids that are showing signs of having been exposed to somebody who uses violence. Giving people information about resources in their community, getting feedback from others. Well, when I hear you say that, I don't see you as weak. I see you as making some really hard choices to protect your kids. Giving people opportunities to think and try new things. And of course, this one is, each of these different change processes kind of take place in different parts of the stages of change, and they can occur, any of them can occur all across those stages, but I'm kind of starting with ones that are more likely to occur at the beginning, when that consciousness raising is kind of part of that move from pre-contemplation to contemplation. So I'm kind of starting there, and you'll see that they'll move on through those stages of change as we go. Another one is paying attention to feelings. Again, we do this with folks all the time, giving them space to express. Sometimes you'll hear people say that they try and just stay too busy. They know I'm too busy to think about it. I just try not to think about it. Well, I don't have time to feel angry, or there's just no space to feel sad. Because really what matters is what the perpetrator is feeling, and they're focused on that. So one thing is to give space to feelings and pay attention to it. Well, why is it that negative feelings go with this old behavior, or why is it that they go with this current status? And is it possible that better other feelings might happen with a change? So, if I were to acknowledge that I use whatever, that scares me and it makes me feel ashamed. So I don't acknowledge it, and I don't feel those feelings, and I just cut them off and I shut the door, and then I won't have to change. So it's giving space to, actually I feel really crappy when I use, because it reminds me of how when I was growing up and my parents would use, and how I always said that I would never be that way and I would never raise my kids that way, and here I am doing the same thing. Another thing that can happen during this is where we have some clients who are at a different place than other clients with their journey, and how they can gain inspiration from each other and say, wow, okay, I don't think I can make it through nursing school, but she is doing it and she has similar barriers to me. Or I didn't think I could be a single mom and manage, but over here there's this single mom that I've met at this program, and she's okay doing that. Or this one is still living with her perpetrator, and yet things are better because she tried X, Y, and Z. And so part of the change is, again, just giving space to stop and think and feel. Taking a look at the social environment. And in seeking safety, this goes right down with exploration and discovery. So what are the things that impact me right now? What are the things about behaviors that impact me? What are the things about behaviors that are impacting others? What are the potential positive impacts on others? So if I were to go to nursing school, what would be the potential positive impact on my kids? What would be the potential positive impact on me? Being stuck here and feeling like I can't achieve anything, and I can't, I'm never going to be capable of doing more and earning more. What's the impact of that on myself as a parent, or on how I relate to my partner? And when they say bad things about me, to what extent does that, do my feelings about myself feed into that and keep me in this place emotionally? And so if you're going to explore the external world, then you also are going to reevaluate the self as well. And so there's this process that I think you've all seen in your clients of creating a new self-image and asking themselves, who am I? What do I want? These really deep, important existential questions. What will it take for me to be safe? What do I really want for myself and my kids? They may not ever say those out loud, but this is the intersection that they're at when they are seeking services. I need change. What's important to me? Something has got. They'll say, I've reached a breaking point. They'll say that something is different, and they might talk about this particular last incident was different, or suddenly I realized how my kids were being affected, and so I've reevaluated, and I realized something has to change. Another helpful thing, hang on just a minute, got to get a drink. Oops. Oh, nope, that's not a hand. Is being able to connect outside of self to other social change, to connect outside. When you have, I sometimes see this with those aha moments where you have a woman who realizes, wait a minute, I'm not just bad and battered. Wait a minute, there's something bigger than this. This is about hierarchy. This is about our social structure. This is about our gender roles. This is about, and be able to connect themselves with larger issues, being able to connect themselves with changing society norms. Um, if you think about the power that comes with volunteering and social liberation and advocacy, maybe somebody thinks, okay, the important thing for me here with change is to start advocating on my own. And maybe I can't be a domestic abuse advocate, but I can start writing letters to my legislators. I can start, you know, talking to people around me. I can start changing the way I parent my kids so that we have discussions about these issues with, you know, when we watch a movie, and I can say, hey, what do you think is going on there in that relationship? You know, we can have questions about and talk about music. And you know, as a society, one of the things we do is help people change in this way, help our whole society change by doing things like smoke-free zones, or having healthy food at schools and work, or providing access to condoms or other contraceptives. You know, there are things we try and do to create change on a larger social scale that fall right along with this. So often getting that larger picture and being able to connect with something bigger than you supports those healthy change behaviors. One of the things that I hear from women in seeking safety when we come to the commitment stage is how they don't trust promises, that they believe that you can't trust that people will honor whatever they say, and that when it comes to keeping promises themselves, that they have usually broken them to everybody, and most especially it is hard for them to make a commitment and keep it for themselves, that they, you know, put themselves last. So this is believing that you can change and that you are committed to act on that belief. I mean, it's that simple. Sometimes it helps to tell other people, hey, I'm going to be trying this, or hey, this is an important thing for me and I could really use your support. Here's some concrete ways you could support me. I'm going to try and have a healthier lifestyle. I'm going to try and exercise every week, and here's how you can support me in that. You can, you know, if you would watch the kids for me 2 hours a week. If you would, I'm going to email you at the end of each day and say how many steps I took that day, you know, whatever. So sharing it with others strengthens it, but it's really about this belief and commitment to yourself. Regardless of everything else in the world, it's important to me. And again, I am sufficient in and of myself. I am enough to know what's important to me and to act on it. So then you have this thing where you go, oh my gosh, here I am again. How am I going to deal with it? I need to develop some new coping skills. I need to practice, and it's not, I'm not going to feel upset with myself because, oh my gosh, I'm in the same, I did it again, or I got myself into the same situation. You can't just tell people to stop. No, stop drinking, stop smoking, stop yelling at your kids, stop having low self-esteem. You have to replace those with other behaviors. So we teach folks grounding. We teach folks new coping skills. And you have to practice and practice and practice so that those healthy alternative thoughts and behaviors take over from the old thoughts and behaviors. And one of the things that comes to mind is when people are so nervous about public speaking and And the recommendation, oh, stand in front of a mirror and say it and practice it. So they're standing in front of, I don't know about you, but when I stand in front of a mirror and I look at myself in the mirror and I speak out loud and read something, I just feel even more stupid and dumb and awkward. So if I want to condition, if I want to do counter conditioning, I need to get as comfortable as possible. I need to get in my jammies. I need to be in my comfortable chair, and I need to practice there so that I reteach my body, rather than that tenseness and anxiety and awkwardness, that I'm reteaching my body, oh, relaxation. I can do this, and I'm coding that behavior to a different feeling than what it was before, and it's going to take some practice. Another really hard change process is asking for help. That means that you have to trust somebody. That means that you have to believe that you are worthy of caring. That means that you risk being rejected. But when you think about trauma as destroying attachment to other people, the thing that is so hard about trauma is how it disrupts human relationships, particularly when that trauma is caused by other human beings. It just hits right at the heart of our social relationships, our social connection to other humans. And we are just primates. We are just social animals. And so when you destroy attachment, it is shattering for somebody. So asking for help is directly trying to overcome that and being willing to be vulnerable again, being willing to trust. And so one of the most important things we do in people's change process is that we are simply present, that we simply bring ourselves, and we bring our respect, and we bring our caring, and we bring our ability to listen and be present with them in their pain and in their struggle. And that in and of itself is huge. So asking for help, going and getting therapy with somebody, going to treatment, going and talking to the college counselor about your class plans, creating buddy systems. I mean, there's reasons why, and sometimes we feel a little leery about this. There's reasons why our women will connect with each other and sometimes even move out and move in with each other. They're creating their own buddy systems to support each other in the struggle. And of course, part of asking for help is that people need practical assistance to remove those barriers, to help that action continue to move forward. Another change process, you got to celebrate. You have to recognize the milestones, and I think that sometimes when you are walking out of this huge hole of trauma, it is hard to see the small steps upwards because you're so focused on how far you still have to go that you aren't necessarily seeing the steps along the way. So assisting people to recognize and celebrate their milestones, providing positive reinforcement rather than punishment, all of those things will help to continue that action stage and continue that forward motion. And then something that absolutely comes out of treatment is the idea of changing people, places, and things. So if you have gone through treatment and then you go back to the exact same friends and the same places you used to hang out in, the same situations, there's a real good chance that you will fall back into old behaviors. I am a evening snacker. I like to eat while I watch, well, I don't actually watch TV, while I cruise the internet. And it's just kind of a mindless thing. So how can you change people and places and things there? Can you do it in a different location where you're less likely to have access to the, like if I'm upstairs in my room doing it, I'm too lazy to go down all the way to the kitchen and get a snack. But when I'm sitting in the living room and the kitchen is literally 10 steps away, I'm much more likely to go get a snack. or, change. If don't sit there all evening and cruise the internet. Change what you do. Go for a walk with, walk the dog. So one change process, which again it is a lot harder than it sounds, is finding ways to remove those old situations, those old triggers that will keep the old behavior going on. And this is one where folks have said, in seeking safety, where they've said, I don't really know how to do this. I don't know any other people. I don't know any other way of life. I don't know where to go. And that mountain seems huge. I mean, they understand the importance of it and they want to. It's not like the motivation isn't there, but they need that help from that external facilitator to give them some ideas along the way. So I think that's a really important role for us. Someone is ready to change when you can almost see it. The wind kind of goes out of their sails. You don't get as much yes but. Actually, they'll often talk less about the problem and more. So it seems like maybe those feelings have resolved and they're ready to take that next step. They might seem more calm. They might seem. What comes to mind is one of the times I was in counseling, and what I would do is I'd go to my appointment and I'd walk in the door and I'd shut the door, and my counselor would say, well, hello, Kirsten, how are you? And I would sit down and I would burst into tears. And then I would cry for an hour, and then we would set the next time, and then I'd come back next week and I'd do the same thing again. And the point at which she started moving me towards, okay, we're done, was the point at which I would cry for less time. And then eventually, on my second session where I came in and I didn't cry at all, she basically was like, I think you're done. You've done this. You don't need this anymore. You're ready for change. And she was right. I had essentially worked through that piece and I was ready to do the next thing. When you hear people say, well, how can I? And I need to. And I think one of the things that happens for us is because when we meet people, there's often been some kind of crisis that's happened, and they do come to us with a specific need. And I'm going to say a specific plan, or at least what they think they need and what they think the plan is, or what they think they're supposed to do. And so they may come seeming like they're ready for something big. And we're really good at that, of leaping in and providing solutions and providing resources, and you can do this, and here's this, and let's go over there, and let's try that. And they'll kind of go along with it for a while, and then the resistance builds and the yes but, because actually they're not in that stage yet. They're actually not ready. There was a crisis, but outside of that crisis, they actually are resistant. And so you'll hear that. When people are ready to make big changes, this gets more consistent. And it's almost like they will drag you towards the change. They're saying, I'm thinking, what if I moved back to Kansas? What if I went in and talked to my employer about helping me with this? What if they'll be experimenting, and they'll have a lot of resolve. Sometimes the resolution may seem calm and relaxed and just, rah, rah, I'm ready, but sometimes it can be resignation. Sometimes it can be come out more as loss, but they're kind of, okay, I'm accepting this. I'm resigned. Time to move on. Time to do something different. They may make very direct statements about being ready to change and why it would be good, and talking about what's not working for them right now in their life. I kind of touched on this already. So forced change, again, whether they might have come to us sounding like they were ready. They might have been sent to us by Child Protective Services. They might have been sent to us by family or friends. They might be there because they think it's what they're supposed to do, but they're not actually wanting to. And so they might be more angry. They might argue more. They might come in feeling defensive, and you're like, I don't know where all this defense is. I'm doing my best, and yet they always act like I'm attacking them and they're being defensive. Well, they're feeling pushed, and maybe it is you, but there's also a chance there's a lot of other forces that are pushing them towards changes they don't want. They might counteract that with a lot of negative coping strategies. So there you might have the cutting, the drinking, the creating chaos. So they have some reason why things aren't going to work. They might shut down and disengage with you, and they might just flat out lie because that's the way to avoid and get out of this thing that they don't want to be happening anyway. So I said that I wasn't going to give actual specific tools, and I'm not. But I'm guessing that throughout this, there's been things I've said where you went, yeah, you know what, I have conversations that sound like that. Yeah, that is something that I do with my clients. We do talk about pros and cons. So when we talk about specific motivational interviewing strategies or skills, there's tons of them, but they kind of fall along these lines. Empathy, that ability to collaborate with somebody, to come alongside of them and meet them where they're at and gain an understanding of their goals and their values. It's all of those open-ended questions and that willingness to just sit back and listen rather than leap ahead to problem solving, leap ahead to strategizing. So empathy is a really important skill. Well, I just said, and exploring their goals and values. So that would be like, okay, on the one hand, and this goes into developing discrepancy. On the one hand, I hear you say that having a relationship with your mother that is honest and close is really important to you. But on the other hand, what I'm hearing you say is that you've continued to lie to her about X, Y, and Z, and you don't want to tell her what's really going on. So, and you're not making a judgment, you're just bringing it forward and saying, I see a difference here between the behavior or the choice and what you say is important, or what your value is, or what your goal that you set for yourself is. So you're just developing the discrepancy there. Asking evocative questions, those are the questions that will lead towards that aha moment, or those little tiny ahas that bring about change. You can ask for examples. So things like, if you don't make change, what do you think will happen? Where would you like to be in 10 years? That'd be an example of looking forward. Where do you want to be in 10 years? What do you hope would be different? And how would this change, whatever it is they're talking about, how would this change fit into that? What are the good things about it? And what are the not so good? I think it's really important that we make sure that we explore the not so good things. We explore those cons. One is because they're absolutely on their mind, and unless they truly honestly address them, you're not going to get movement towards the next stage. And another thing is, I think it does build rapport, and it shows that I get it. I see the whole range, and I accept you as a whole person who, of course, has pros and cons about everything. It is a con to give up your booze. It is a con to to be honest with somebody or to ask for help. It can absolutely be a con. So we're just going to deal with it honestly and not judge. What were the good things about? What was the not good things about? You can do scales on a scale of 1 to 10. How important is this change? Whatever, this XYZ change. You can use the past. Do you remember a time when? And I've used that a lot. Do you remember a time when you did feel good about yourself? Do you remember a time when you did feel like you could, blah, blah, blah? Do you remember a time when you felt healthy and you felt like you weighed a good weight for yourself? What was that like? I will often ask people, tell me who you were before this relationship. Tell me what you were proud of. Tell me Tell me what you've lost. You can use extremes. What's the worst that would happen if you made this change? What's the best thing that could possibly happen if you made this change? You can ask magic wand questions. You know, if you had a magic wand, or if you could, and you could change something, or if you had 3 wishes, that would change something. Another good one is if you woke up tomorrow and something had changed, whatever is the identified problem or issue, if that had changed and you didn't know it had changed overnight, but you woke up, how would you know that things had changed? What would be different in their life that would be real and noticeable and physical? They could see the benefit of that change. So there's tons of strategies, there's tons of skills, all about helping people to explore where they're at and where they want to be, and make it so it's more important for them to get there than to stay stuck. And that is the 50-minute, very quick, here's what stages of change and change processes are like for people. And that is kind of the foundation for motivational interviewing. Are there any comments or questions? So for the few people that came in after I had said this at the very beginning, I said that for the next webinar, I'm going to get more into those exact specific words. A lot of times people are like, oh, I don't know how to counsel people, and what would I say? And it's like, really, just be present and be a human being. That's one of my answers. And my other answer is, I can tell you exactly what to say. Here's a list of some really good questions, some really good strategies. So we're going to go through some really good questions and strategies, and take one a day and start adding that into your advocate toolkit, or into your advocate vocabulary, where I'm going to use this question and see how that helps me to help the client to explore where they're at, or how that helps them to have that change process, that aha, or encourage them to keep going. And I'm not seeing any comments or questions, so I'm going to assume that was very clear and hopefully seems useful. And I hope that I will see everybody again. I don't remember what date it was that I scheduled it for. Oh, there's a question. Carrie, I'm going to unmute you. There you go.
Hi, Kristen.
Hi, yeah, everyone can hear you.
Oh, good. I had typed this out. I wasn't sure if you could read it or not, but my question was, how do you move from pre-contemplative stage to the contemplative stage? Are there certain questions, or is there a certain method that you use kind of surrounding this conversion?
Well, again, part of it is for me to recognize where they're at.
Sure.
I go, okay, they don't think they have a problem. And so then, and I guess I don't want to necessarily frame it as a problem, but for the benefit of talking right now, I'm going to frame it as a problem. Okay, they don't see they have a problem. We'll use drinking as an example. They don't think they have a problem. So to move in towards contemplation, it might be something like, so how is that working for you? Okay. And I see this in Batter's group a lot. So on the one hand, you say that you don't have an issue. And on the other hand, you're sitting here in a group. Now you've got a record. Now you're stuck having to come here, and you got to spend your time, and you got to spend your money, and you got to. So how is this working for you? Has this really been successful? The pros and cons thing is helpful. So what are the things? There's some Batter intervention things where they will, as part of the intake session, or they're getting ready, one of the things I do is have them do what's important, like what is it that you want out of a relationship? And they'll say things, I want love, I want stability, I want respect, I want, this, that, and the other. And then say, okay, so have these behaviors, have they led you to that? Now, if you want respect, does calling her a bitch mean that you're going to get more respect? So to just kind of develop that questioning and that discrepancy there between what you say is your goal or what you say is your value and the behavior that you're seeing.
Sure.
Because if this is working for you, then we don't have to be here. That's fine, not a problem. And I think for us, one of the places where that might come in is if you have a client that clearly, from your perspective, has a substance abuse issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you might sit down and say, here's what I'm seeing, and here's my concerns around your safety. And they're like, whatever, I'm not on it, I don't want to talk about it. She's in pre-contemplation. It's not on her plate. And that's not where the change is going to come for her. You might be able to say, well, what I've seen in the past, if you say that one of the issues for you is making sure that you're able to maintain custody for your kids, one of the things that I've seen in the past, information, in this case it would be giving information, one of the things that I've seen in the past is judges will look at that kind of behavior and they often will judge moms more harshly.
Yep.
So certainly giving information is a tool, but if she says, screw that, that's just, I have too many things on my plate, I need my substance, or I'm not going to be able to manage, then you're like, fine, and you move on. So you're giving information, you're saying, how does that work for you? You're doing the pros and cons list, and you're basically saying, here's what you want,
mm-hmm.
but here's the behavior, and does your behavior get you to where you want to be?
Exactly, like your analogy to leading a horse to water.
Yeah,
they have
exactly.
to make the decision. Yeah. Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
They have to make that decision, absolutely. And you could force that horse to drink. You can force people to go through the batter's education program. You can force people into substance abuse treatment. You can force battered women into our programs, which is what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Child Protective Services or whoever forces their parents. I mean, I can remember getting calls from people like, my mom told me I had to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, here's the thing. You don't have to talk to me if you don't want to. And just that completely changes the conversation. I'm actually not here to force you to do anything. You can get a whole lot more out of people if you
take the supportive role.
Right, if you take the supportive role, and when people are resistant, you just accept their resistance.
Right.
You accept their resistance and go, you know what? You're right. I can see why you wouldn't want to talk to me. You don't know me. You don't want your mom getting in your business.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want her to mess up your safety by forcing you to do something. She doesn't know. I don't know. So sure, I can tell you what we do, and if we're ever helpful to you, great. I think that's a great interaction because that person felt respected. They felt, oh, this person got it, and they didn't push me. And that's the person that's more likely to call back. So as I said, there's a lot of this stuff that we already do because it works. It's just here it's all been collected into a model so that it can be used intentionally. And so when you're stuck, you can actually go back and say, I've tried that and that and that. Oh, I'll try this now. Any other comments or questions or from anyone? Okay, well, I thank everyone for spending an afternoon with me. And I have a feeling we'll be talking about motivational interviewing quite a bit more in the future in our field. So thanks for getting on board and at least learning a little bit about it, or for some of you, just getting a refresher.
Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, and stop recording.